Reboot Theatre is celebrating its 10th anniversary this year, and given all that's happened in just the last 5 years, that's quite an accomplishment, especially here in Seattle. And with a mission statement that reads, Reboot Theatre Company tests new interpretations of established works through non-traditional casting, design, and methods yet to be discovered, the company has produced at least 11 productions over that time frame that I counted scientifically by going to the website. And the last two of which I've reviewed. Musicals Anyone Can Whistle and Damn Yankees. And they're continuing this year with Oliver opening on March 21st and Anything Goes in November. To talk about all of these things in this episode of Get to Know a Theater is Reboot's founding artistic director, Jasmine Joshua. Welcome to the show, Jasmine.
Yay, thank you for having me.
Boy, so much to talk about. First off, 10 years. Take us back to the beginning, which probably seems like it was yesterday on one hand and a million years ago on the other.
It's true. So it truly started where I was pregnant in 2014, and I knew that I was going to be taking a step back from theater for a little while, especially once I found out that I was having twins. And I thought, I don't know what that's going to mean for me, for my family, for whatever. But I, still wanted to be involved in theater. I still wanted to do things. And so I thought, I've always wanted to be in 1776, which famously is all men, except for two. And I was like, well, whatever. If I just have a reading in my living room with my friends, who cares who we are and what we do? And and there are 26 congressmen in this play. So I started asking people, hey, do you want to come to my house and read and sing through 1776? And so many people were like, I love that show. I would love to do that show. Absolutely, absolutely. And then I'm like, okay, well, what if we just wanted to invite some people? The whole cast is going to fill my living room. So if we wanted to do something and invite people, maybe we should just do a concert versions. And there have been other, at the time, people had done concert versions with an all-female cast. But to my knowledge, before we did it, I had never seen a full production of it. But I was like, okay, other people have done concert versions, so maybe I'll do a concert version. And then I started talking to people, and they were like, I'll build your set. I'll help with lights. I will build all your costumes for you. And I'm like, well, that sounds like a full play to me. So I kind of just fell into producing it. And and a lot of it was just talking about it and people getting excited about it. And it was, it was such an incredible experience to do it and have no idea what I was doing. In a lot of ways, it's kind of better that way because you don't know, you can't do that. It's I don't know. I can't do anything. So.
The naive part of it. You're too, naive to really know what's...
yeah, exactly. What's not possible. Yeah. And so we did 1776, and I could only afford the rights for one weekend, so it was 4 shows. And afterward, for years, people would come up to me being like... Well, I mean, to this day, yes, for years still people say this, but in the short term, people would say after the first 5 minutes, it didn't occur to me that any of you weren't men. I just didn't think about it anymore. And I thought, really? So what you're telling me is, Benjamin Franklin, these are all real human beings. Benjamin Franklin existed. As far as we know, he was a white cis man. John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, Dickinson, all of them. And you're telling me that even though the facts are that none of us were white cis men, you still understood the story, you still enjoyed it, you were still moved by it, and the acting and the storytelling superseded the reality. Well, what else? What else can we do? I mean, if I can have a woman play Ben Franklin and nobody be like, that doesn't make sense and that ruins my worldview, well, then why not anything, right? Yeah. And that's how it started, and then I just started being like, well, hey, do you want to start a company where we just do this? And people were like, yeah, I want to start a company where we can do this. And that's kind of how it began. And
okay. Well, where does the name Reboot come from? I mean, as a tech guy, Reboot means one thing to me. It's what you got to do with a Microsoft, computer every week just to make sure it works.
When you can't blow into the cartridge, you got to reboot it.
Exactly.
Right? That just gave away my age. So in any case, so the idea was especially, in like the 2000s, like doing like reboots of all of the like superhero things. Like that was such a huge thing. Like, oh, we're gonna reboot. Like, how many Batman movies are there?
Yeah.
Every single one is a reboot.
Yep.
James Bond, every single one, like it's a different guy, right?
Yep.
So you have to redo it, and like the different Batman. I think that's such a good example. Like they're all so different, even though it is the same character. It is the same lore, and it's like that in the comics too, right?
Yeah, for sure.
You know, like different threads have different vibes, and so that's kind of where I took the idea. I'm like, well, all right, well, what if we rebooted The Music Man someday?
Yeah.
It's gonna be so good. Like, what if we rebooted anything? And just did it. And it doesn't have to be the definitive version. I mean, like, if you ask anyone what's the definitive Batman, everyone's going to say something different.
Yeah.
You know? And
Even though it's Adam West.
Even though they could be wrong.
Yes.
But yeah, like, so that was kind of where it came from of like, you know what? Like, we don't have to, theater especially, like, once it closes, it goes away.
Yeah.
There's no it's only available in your heart and in your memory.
Yeah.
So it's not a museum. It's not a movie. You will see, Adam West do the same thing every time you watch one episode.
Yeah.
The book will be the same book every time you read it. The theater isn't like that.
Yeah.
Even performance to performance.
Yeah. Interesting. But all right, so let's talk about your mission statement, which
Yeah.
I think is really intriguing. And I think you've sort of defined that, when you're talking about the reaction you got from 1776 and what you designed the group around doing. But so how does talk to me a little bit about how your mission statement, I guess, how that, I guess you formalize that, but also how that's informed the plays you've chosen and how that feeds into your philosophy on programming.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think a lot of it is, thank God, in 10 years we have evolved as a company, because if we were stagnant, that would be boring and dumb. So we have definitely evolved in like, okay, so what is a reboot? What does that mean to us? And at the beginning, it truly was just like, anyone can play any character, and so what? And as the artistic director, and what I now kind of put on the directors who come forth with an idea is I say, okay, so what do you want to say? And then we can use tools like casting and design and methods yet to be discovered to help you say what you want to say. Like, those are the tools, so that it's not just like, we're doing Sound of Music, but Maria's a man. Like, okay, I'm open to that. Yeah. What does that say? What does that mean, right? So, in Damn Yankees, the recent one we just did, when Brad Walker was like, I want to do Damn Yankees, but I want to do it with League of Their Own. And I'm like, that's fun. Why? What do you want to do? And there's no wrong answer. But then I can help, I can work with Brad and ask more pointed questions.
Yeah.
Like, so what are we talking about? And he's like, well, I'd like to talk about what it means to be a woman in sports. No, now that's interesting. Yeah. What does that mean? Like, what the derision that those ball players get because they're so bad at it. Like, are they actually that bad? Or is it partially just like the prejudice around them? Like the All-American Girls League, like it was entertainment, but these were like women who were actually athletes, and this was the only way they could do it. And what a cool skin to put on this very gendered musical from the 50s.
Yeah,
right?
So not just doing it for the sake of doing it, not just putting women in men's roles just so that you can say, hey, we put women in men's roles, but to do it for a reason.
Yeah. And sometimes it doesn't matter, and sometimes it does. And I, philosophically, something that like I've been learning, especially when I first started this company, I was not out as non-binary. I came out actually later, believe it or not. But this was one of what I call like my breadcrumbs, where I'm like, when I look back on my life and I'm like, oh yeah, I should have known then. And like creating Reboot was probably one of those. It's like, why did I want to play John Adams so bad? What was it about being a man in heels that made me go, ooh, I really want to do that? But in any case, like, as I've like learned more about like my gender and about like, trans and non-conforming genders in general, it has changed the way I look at gender in casting and also just on stage, because sometimes like it doesn't matter, like you can have like, we don't have to make it, you don't always have to make it about the identity of the actor if it doesn't serve the story.
Right.
But you certainly can, and that gets juicy and that gets fun.
Yeah.
What makes it different if, Joe Hardy is a woman and Welsh, the owner, says, let me talk, that is different. That is a very different than just a bluster guy like, hey, let me say it. If he does it to another man, like that's a very different thing than like, quiet little girl, I speak now.
Yeah.
We didn't change anything. It's just the difference. And like, how much does, and that's kind of up to the director and the actors of like, how much do they want to react to that and have a moment of like, wait a second, you know, why am I getting shut down? So
you can make a deeper story.
Absolutely, right? And, you know, again, figuring out like when do you acknowledge the identity of the actor and have that change the character they're playing versus not. I don't know, it's different for every single show. And so that's why, like, when we are looking at programming, we're like, okay, like, tell me what the pitch is. Tell me what you think you'd like to do with casting. And now the next level is, and what does that domino? When we did Sweeney Todd, we were, this was like, I don't know, it was like our 5th show. Maybe not even. Might have been like 4th. And we were still trying to like figure out like what's the what's the equation? What is it? And I was talking to the director, and she was looking at a bunch of different people to play Joanna. And in Sweeney Todd, Joanna has is like described as having like yellow hair. Like that is like a big thing in the Big Love Song, right? And I said, you know, you can cast Joanna however you want. Anyone can have any color of hair that you want. So, like, don't worry about that. But I will tell you this. Similarly, the judge, who is, like, a predator in this show, and specifically is, you know, sexually attracted to Joanna, who is a girl, who is, like, so, you know, certainly not an adult yet. So there's, like, and he raised her. So it's kind of a gross, you know, thing.
That's skeevy, yeah.
Yeah, right. And he has this really hot, like, gross and, like, gross, like, song about how he, like, desires her. And I was like, okay, so here's the deal. If you cast a white person in the role of Joanna, I don't know that it is ethical for you to cast a person of color as the judge. Even though the rest of the cast, like, we had, like, an Asian beggar woman and a white Sweeney and a black Joanna, and clearly, like, you know, I mean, like, we were colorblind in the sense that we didn't acknowledge the actors' ethnicities in our story. However, the audience is still going to see it. Yeah. If I cast a black man who is now lusting after a little white girl, like, taking a step back from it, like, yes, I don't see color, but, like, the audience does.
Yeah, yeah.
And is that ethically okay for us to do that? So I said, like, just be mindful of what the audience is going to see, even if you're not acknowledging it in the story. Because that's still important, right?
Yeah, it is, because they come with a different perspective than you come with.
Yeah, absolutely.
As creators. Yeah, so this season you've got Oliver opening next month.
Yes!
So what can people expect from that one?
Oh man, it's gonna be so good. I'm playing Fagin, and I am so honored to be in this part. The team in Oliver is excellent. We're doing a punk rock bent on it, so we're kind of like yes, we're like in the Victorian world that is typical of what you think of Oliver, but we're kind of drawing this parallel to London also in the 70s, like the 1970s and 1980s, which was actually kind of similar with like economic disparity and class struggle and the haves and the have-nots and the struggle of the lower classes to be like, like I can't, like the upper mobility being so hard.
Yeah.
And so we are, you know, again, we're not changing anything because we're not allowed to, but just like what the audience sees, we're adding a little more like punk like attitude in it. In the choreo, Annalisa Brinkman is our choreographer, and it's so good. So audiences, like, you will hear all the songs that you love, you will see it in a completely new different way. I think it's going to be a really invigorating show. I'm very excited to see it.
I can't wait. And then we've got Anything Goes in November.
Anything Goes in November. This is going to be also, we honestly, like, we just need something fun, everybody.
Yeah, well, that's an understatement.
You know, like, my God. Yeah. So Anything Goes, we're doing, the funny thing about doing Anything Goes is that the ongoing joke in a lot of our board meetings is always like, so what's the next reboot? It's just like, what, like, fill in blank in space. Like, on the moon, right? Like, how dumb. Except we're totally doing it this time, and it's going to be great. So we're doing Anything Goes in space, because Anything Goes takes place on a cruise ship, but now it's going to be a space cruise ship.
Ooh.
We plan to put in like space fandoms across the board, so that this cast is just going to be filled with Easter eggs for all of the fans.
Oh, great.
It's going to be so much fun. We have talked about, I'll give you like a little secret. I hope we'll be able to figure this out, because otherwise people will be sad. But we were like, what if we programmed Roombas to like go across the stage? So we had like droids. Like, how fun would that be? So like we're really buying into like the space thing. Harry Turpin, who is directing and choreographing it, who is obviously on our board, long time.
Harry's amazing. Yeah,
Harry's the best, and he has so many fun ideas about like what characters will be skinned as like which fandom and how that's going to work. We've got aliens. We've got. This is going to be a lot of fun. And again, anything goes. It's such a frothy. I don't want to say nothing plot, but it's a nothing plot.
Yeah.
Like, the plot is meaningless.
Yeah.
The songs are great, though.
Yeah, for
and so it's just going to be like a full space adventure with like the gloriousness of a Cole Porter score. So very excited. Right when it starts to get dark, too.
Awesome. Yeah, exactly. So that opens in November. So what I want to talk about now is I guess getting more towards the serious business aspect of the of your endeavor, so to speak. Because one of the things I like to talk about with artistic directors is how do you strike the balance in programming between the need to fill the seats and raise money, because that's obviously part of what you're responsible for, and putting up shows that are important to you or do you think are important for people to see?
Yeah. Fortunately, we have found a niche where people do think that the work we do is important. And because, we have had a decade of experience doing it, dare I say, we do it really well. And so, so that I think that people are coming to knowing that, like, what, I might see something a little bit different, but I know it's going to be good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
so even if I walk away and I'm like, well, all right, like maybe like I like Damn Yankees the way it was. This reboot didn't really do it for me, but it is undeniable the talent that we had on that stage.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that like people have come to understand that. And I think that like that's in general. But I think that also, like we are known as a safe space for the queer and trans communities, on stage, off stage, and in our audience. And I think that that is a draw for those communities, that this is a spot where it's like, yeah, we're not going to blink twice. This is not like stunt casting. This is just who we are and who we have always been. This is not an awakening that we have had.
Yeah.
This is just who we are. And this is where we come to, tell stories with people in our community. So I feel like that, like, I'm really proud of how Reboot has always kind of held on to that throughout the years.
Are these two shows at Theater Off Jackson?
Yes, they're both at Theater Off Jackson.
I love that little space. It's so unassuming when you look at it from the outside.
I know, and then you just like open into this like underground cabin.
Yeah,
it's great.
Yeah, there's a bunch of places in Seattle that are like that. Mm-hmm. I think they're just really hidden gems. So I saw on the website, speaking of funding, for your 10th anniversary, you've got a 10 and Beyond campaign.
Yes, we do.
A new fundraiser for your 10th anniversary. Can you tell us about that and how people can donate and learn more about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is our 10-year anniversary, and the theme is we'd like to do 10 more years of this. And it is getting more and more expensive to do that. So we are doing our 10 and Beyond campaign so that we can kind of bolster up our coffers so that we can continue to do this great work, and also to start to increase our budget so that we can actually pay people a little bit more, since like cost of living also kind of sucks. I think I can say sucks, sorry.
You can say whatever you want.
Great.
Yeah.
So we are, that fundraising campaign is going on now. We're trying to raise $10,000 by June. And we are actually like about halfway there already. So yeah, we're really, it's steamrolling. We're getting there. And if anyone would like to help out with that, we certainly would not say no, especially like anything that you can give. There is no amount that is too small. And if you have like rich relatives who are just like, man, I have so much money and I just can't think of what to do with it, I have such a good idea. You can go to reboottheater.org, and right on our website, there's a big 10 and Beyond campaign, and you can click on that and we will happily take care of that for you.
That's awesome. Well, speaking of that, before we get into the heavy part of the conversation, where do you see yourself in 10 years? I mean, let's assume you get, the fundraiser's a success. and you continue and nothing wacky happens, like the world ends. In 10 years, where do you see Reboot Theatre?
Yeah, so my dream...
It's like a job interview. Where do you
I know,
see yourself in 10 years?
Well, Greg, where I see myself in 10 years with Reboot is I would love for Reboot to have a permanent space. And with that comes with, I would love for us to have a staff. Right now, we are an entirely working board. We're all volunteers. Like, I also work out in the marketing team. Our board members, like, we do like marketing, we do the build for the set, we run the box office. I mean, everything that it takes to put on a show, people do for free on our board because they are passionate about our mission and they want to like create something beautiful. So I would love to hopefully in the next 10 years start to transition that working board into having a staff of people who are able to be paid. You know, ideally, yes, a livable salary, but I mean, you know, like something so that this is something that they are paid to do, and that our board becomes more of a governance board, which is more traditional, like governance fundraising board.
Yep.
So that's what I would love. And then in terms of a space, like we love being the resident company at Theater of Jackson. It's amazing. It is really hard to find rehearsal space. Fortunately, David Shea at React just opened the React Studios, which are fabulous. Like, David, like, my God, like, what a benefit to the community.
Yeah, I interviewed him a few months ago at that space.
Yes.
Yeah.
The best, thank God, because, like, TPS also, like, such an important part of the theater community, but, like, because of where the Kraken plays and because of that concert venue, street parking can be $30 a night.
Yeah.
And that's not tenable for artists.
Yeah.
So it's like not only do you have to park like several years away and then hike in, which is also has an accessibility issue, like it's just cost prohibitive. So yes, we still use TPS. Yes, it's an important part, but like having React as an alternative. But really it's that. So it's one of the two. And if either of them are out, you're kind of you're scrambling a little bit. So my dream in 10 years is like, yes, I would love a full-time staff. I would also love to have a space where like we can have reliable rehearsal studios. Like maybe we also rent it out to others. Maybe it's a space where like downstairs is like a coffee shop that turns into a bar, but then we also have like some sort of like community touchstone that is like theater oriented instead of theaters always being the guest somewhere else. It'd be nice to be like, this is a theater and everyone is welcome here.
Yeah.
So like that's my like big dream goal for the next 10 years. And I don't know, why not?
Theater for the community, by the community,
That's right.
of the community.
Indeed.
So, and one of the challenges I think every theater is going to face over the next at least 4 years probably is the elephant that's in every theater right now is what's happening in Washington with current administration and what is an attack, what seems like an attack, maybe not on the arts per se, but at least more on the freedom of expression through the arts. From the takeover of the Kennedy Center to the numerous executive orders and new requirements for NEA grants. Anyone who seems like, and to use my example from the interview I had with Alan Harrison the other day, who doesn't want to do just 42nd Street,
Right.
is going to be under attack from the government. And reading through your mission statement, anybody I think in Washington in this administration would read your mission statement would absolutely cringe.
Oh, yeah. I would ruin a lot of people's days, for which I am proud.
Yes. So I guess as an artistic director, obviously this is something that that has to make you think about mission and funding and the whole overall scope of it. So how do you, what as an artistic director can you do to combat this as a theater, and what can theater goers do in your opinion?
Well, obviously all of this news coming out of Washington and all of like the national level nightmares that just the hits keep on coming, not only to the arts community, but to the LGBTQ plus community. And that intersection hits Reboot obviously like right in the heart because that is our intersection. And truly theater everywhere. I mean, let's be real.
Yeah.
But we like, because that is like our focus, we're also like, ooh, we've said it aloud and that makes us a target. Now, I don't want to say the good news, but the uplifting thing to think about is that theater has always existed and queer people have always existed, whether or not the government likes it, or wants to make a rule about it. And so my thought is like, look, I don't want to have to backslide into an era where we all have code words and we know who the friends of Dorothy are and we have to have secret whatevers, but we can and we will. If I have to not call it DEI anymore because that upsets people, whatever, we'll call it the spiral crazy day. I mean, whatever, you know what I mean? We can come up with whatever it is we need to say to continue to be who we are and do what we do. And if it means I have to I'm not taking the rainbow off. I'm not even doing that. They can eat me. I honestly, I'm at the point where it's we're always going to exist.
Yeah.
How we play the game, that's going to change. And I don't think that we're going to know that until it hits local, which kind of brings me to the next point, which is yes, Seattle, we're about as far literally from Washington as we can be. Washington, D.C., obviously. And so waves of whatever this nightmare is might take longer to get to us in the little enclave that we have. But it might. And I don't, and who is to say what it will embolden and, what will happen. But I think that, I keep saying, you can make a big difference in your small world. It feels like I can't go to the Kennedy Center. God. I can't go to, I'm sure there's one of those too. I can't go to the Kennedy Center and stop them from canceling the Gay Men's Chorus big concert. They're going to do that.
Yeah.
I can't stop them from canceling the Finn tour. I can't stop them from canceling NEA grants that are going out to thousands of people across the country and affect people, here as well. But I can still do a pretty gay Fagin. And I have plenty
do it well.
and do it well and have plausible deniability. And you can still buy a ticket to go see that. And you can still go buy a ticket to see the Seattle Gay Chorus. And you can still buy a ticket to go see, any number of shows and support those artists who are here and doing it here. Even though, on a big level, it sometimes feels small. Because that is still an act of resistance. And I think that it's about, I don't always believe it. It's not like I walk around everything's gotta be fine. There are days where, I feel awful. And there are days where it feels like it's all too much. But I keep saying, but right here, what I can control, I can still do.
Yeah.
And until I physically am stopped from doing it, and even then, I'm gonna keep doing it. So, people in Seattle can still support. Magpie is another trans and gender nonconforming theater. There are other people who are doing this work, and you can still go and see them. They're about to put up Camelot. Hell yeah, another super gendered show. Go see it.
Yeah.
Support them, give them money, give Reboot money, give Seattle Gay Men's Chorus, Seattle Gay Women's Chorus, all of it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's funny. I read through the requirements of the DEA grants, and I'm thinking, first of all, anybody who does a panto is out. As far as that goes, because of but it's
they're not going to show Mrs. Doubtfire on planes anymore.
Yeah, so
it's stupid.
But I think the one thing that in the second part of the question was what can theater goers do, and it's attending these shows, but it's also letting people like that with a theater group like you have, that we've got your back, that we're going to support you, and we're not going to let you swing in the wind on your own. And I think the people that like us in at the Sound on Stage and other people that support these organizations that are fighting against this, that we are allies, and we're not going to let them, we're not going to let them win. So,
And and truly, I think the media, that's just such a great point, has such a part to play, because it's not necessarily all has to be a fire and brimstone, to the cast. It's just you know what? I'm going to keep reporting. And they still exist, and they're still here, and they are on par with any of the, approved messages or whatever. You know what I mean? If someone does a regular version of Oklahoma, fine.
Yeah.
That is just as valid as what we're doing at Reboot, and they should both be available to a free country to consume.
Yeah.
And the press has such an important role, especially in arts coverage, to continue to cover the arts, and that includes, art that is being done that is technically approved, and art that is, not allowed anymore. And I think that that's where, people like you come in. It's like, it's all good. Like anyone in a free country should be able to go see regular Oklahoma and Reboots Oklahoma or whatever it is.
Yeah, and we have the ability to give oxygen to. It's what is the whole thing? The wolf that you feed, whatever the whole thing is. Yeah, so we can ignore them. Don't give them because a lot of it is bluster, and is not. Heck, if they're just stripping the government of employees, who's going to enforce any of this stuff, right? But anyway, that's going to be either way. It's going to be a challenge, but I think it's something that if everybody works together, and hangs in there together, and like you said, I think Seattle, the arts community in Seattle, seems to be united in the in their dedication to making sure this doesn't impact anybody.
Yeah, again, that's like kind of the bittersweetness of like, look, I can control what I'm doing in Seattle, and like unfortunately, like I don't know how Spokane's gonna do. I don't know how Kansas is gonna do. I don't know how parts of Illinois or whatever are gonna do, and that is going to have generational impact.
Yeah,
and that is devastating, and kind of like, again, like the bright spot of that is like hopefully with the internet that people all across the country can still see like there are still places across the world where like you are allowed to exist and you can see art and be a human being. Another thing, just for people to do, like gay, lesbian, and queer bars where drag happens and where all sorts of like gender fuckery is allowed. Like, if you are in one of those spaces and someone is being disgusting, put yourself in front of them and get rid of them. That is something that you can do. I think that just in public, as a human being walking around the world, if you start hearing people say things, you can just be like, please don't.
Yeah.
Do not say that. Or my favorite thing to do is explain what you mean. Because sometimes the shame kicks in, and it's like, yes, and it should. And it should. So I think like those are other things, like just like as if it starts to encroach, like you have the ability to say something, especially these days. That's
along the lines of when people talk about DEI, making them actually say the words.
What is that exactly you're not liking?
Yeah. and also when they talk about woke, having them define what woke is, because at some point in the argument they're going to sound ignorant.
Yes. And I think that they know that, but it makes them feel good. And so it shouldn't feel good.
Yeah.
So anything that you can do to make that not feel good, please, like, get creative, man.
All right. Well, before we let you go, let's switch to something a little happier.
Yes.
Do you have a dream show that you personally would like to be in, and one that you would like Reboot to do as part of what you guys do?
So this would not be, I don't know that this would be perceived as a reboot, but I would love to play Mama Rose before I die. That is a bucket list role for me. Another bucket list role for me, which I also would love to do at Reboot, is I would love to play Harold Hill. I would love for Reboot to do the Music Man.
This is the second reference to the Music Man, so something's got to happen here.
I love the Music Man, and I feel like doing those like bigger shows, especially ones that are so like, like America, everything is good. Like, yes, they're a little grumpy in Iowa, but nothing else is wrong. And like, I don't know, because I mean, this kind of goes back to my thing where like, I would love to be able to be in the Music Man and not have to make it about anything other than the Music Man. I just would like to be in it. And you know, like, I mean, I think of also like BIPOC people, like can't they just be in it? Like, do we have to make, you know what I mean? And like, I mean, I think that there's like this like gets into like a kind of like, I've like ruined this very innocuous question with this. But like, I have like two kinds of casting, like kind of as we talked about before. It's like casting where you acknowledge the identity of the actor and casting where you don't. And I think that both are valid. Mm-hmm. And I think it's mostly just like, everyone should sing Iowa Stubborn if you want to. I think that's great. And we don't have to make it about anything except why does it matter? It does not change the story at all or your understanding of it.
Yeah.
if people who don't look like what we traditionally think of sing it. So
Yeah.
that's why I'm like, ooh, let's have Reboot do it. So Music Man would be on my Reboot bucket list. I would love.
Yeah. Yeah, there's it's there's the Hamilton thing where
that's right.
it's, but then there's just you could do 12 Angry Jurors, which is just a mix of men, women.
Does anyone? It's still as powerful.
Yeah.
You still understand. I mean, Shakespeare, God, like people have been doing it for years, and no one's like. I mean, apart from like regular, like I didn't understand what they were saying. Like the person saying it is not what made it hard for you to understand.
Well, Shakespeare only takes me about 10 minutes before I can.
Right. Yeah. You have to like wind in.
Yeah. Very cool. So March. Oh, I had the date here, but my iPad went blank.
Oh my God.
March 20.
I'm going to say 21st, and I hope that that's true.
I'm going to edit this out. So, March 21st.
Hey, we were right.
March 21st.
March 21st, opening for Oliver. It's going to be delightful.
At the Theater off Jackson.
At Theater off Jackson.
Awesome. So we can't wait to see that one, and then we've got Anything Goes in November.
Yes.
All right. So Jasmine, Joshua, thank you so much for taking the time.
Yes, thank you.
To join us on our first episode of Get to Know a Theater for 2025. And hopefully we'll have many more coming up here soon.
Yeah.
So for all you out there watching, I appreciate the time and support. Greg Hyland with the Sound on Stage. And until next time, I will see you at the stage door.